Well, it finally happened. A horror movie that came out in 2024 finally dethroned The First Omen for me. Um, but before we get into that, hi, I'm Shay. Welcome to my channel. Do not mind if you hear any craziness in the background. My cat is on one tonight, and I don't know where she's going to be right now. She's hiding under my bed, and at some point she might just knock something over, and we'll just have to accept it. Also, I am wearing new false eyelashes, so if my face looks kind of weird, it's because the one that's on my right side is way too heavy for my eye, but I have committed to this and I cannot take it off right now. I mean, I could, but like, it ruined the look. But anyways, yes. So on this channel, I usually talk about horror movies, horror stuff. We're getting into Halloween Horror Night season, so I'm super excited about that. Gonna have a few fun videos coming up in the next month regarding HHN. It's been a while since we've talked about it. And I actually had a different plan for this week. I had a different plan for this month entirely, but I've had a lot of derailments. Originally, I was going to be making another Does This Deserve to Be a Classic video, and had everything all planned out. And I was going to work on it this weekend, but then I watched this movie and it kind of threw all of that out the window. And I figured, well, I've been talking about new movies all month, so why not just keep up the trend for right now? Last movie we talked about was Long Legs. Before that was A Quiet Place Day One. And now we're going to be talking about Abigail. So this is kind of new. It came out this year at least, but it came out in April of this year, and I am horrendously late to the party because at the time, the position I was in, I just didn't have the availability to go see the movie in theaters. I heard that it was pretty good. A lot of people were just kind of like, "Oh yeah, it was good. It was enjoyable." And if people had had the hype that they had for Megan for this movie, I probably would have gone and seen it. Like, I would have made it a priority, but because people were just like, "Yeah, it was pretty good," I didn't prioritize it, so I completely skipped it in theaters, and then they recently released it on Peacock, last Friday, and I sat down, watched it Saturday night, and I love this movie. And I cannot get enough of this movie. This is probably one of my most favorite movies I've seen in a long time. I'm definitely going to be buying it, and I'm definitely going to be watching it multiple times, especially during Halloween time. It feels like it's fitting there. So before we fully get into this review, I would like to remind you to like, subscribe, check things out. Obviously, if you haven't seen this movie, I'm going to try my best not to spoil it too much, but I might spoil it. So if you haven't seen this movie, if you have Peacock or you have access to Peacock, go watch it first, then come back to this video and let me know what you think about this movie. So without further ado, let's get into another creepy critique. All right, so some basic facts about this movie is that it is called Abigail, obviously. It was released in theaters on April 19th and then released on Peacock on July 19th, which I think is really interesting that it was released on Peacock July 19th after it was released on April 19th. It was directed by Tyler Gillette and Matt Bettinelli Olpin, otherwise known as Radio Silence. They did the last two Scream movies, and Ready or Not as well. It also stars Melissa Barrera, Dan Stevens, Catherine Newton, and Angus Cloud in his final role, which they do acknowledge at the end of this film. It has a 6.6 out of 10 on IMDb and an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is not bad. Again, most of these movies are pretty, like, they're pretty middle ground because I feel like everybody has differing opinions. Some people really love something, some people really hate something. It's okay. It doesn't mean it's bad or it's good. And here is the synopsis for this movie. A group of would-be criminals kidnaps the 12-year-old daughter of a powerful underworld figure. Holding her for ransom in an isolated mansion, their plan starts to unravel when they discover their young captive is actually a bloodthirsty vampire. Ooh, scary. That's not really a spoiler, fortunately. Fortunately, that's something that they pretty much tell you in the trailer, which I kind of wish they didn't. But we'll get to it. So, Abigail, I watched this on Saturday and I was delightfully surprised. I was actually taken aback by how much I enjoyed it. I really wasn't sure what to expect. Like, I knew I would like it because I knew it was like a campy horror comedy. So I knew I would enjoy it, but I didn't realize how much I was going to enjoy it until I actually sat down to watch the movie. So let's get into the good things, the things I liked about this movie. So the first thing that I really liked about this movie is, I will say it right here, it had really good gore effects. Obviously, I'm not going to give away too much about the movie, but it is very gory. If you're familiar with anything from Radio Silence, they love to cover people in as much blood and guts as possible, and this movie is no exception. There is so much gore, so much blood, so much guts. At one point, you're just like, when does it end? But it's really cool because their gore effects are really good. I don't know who the VFX studio is, but the effects are just like super realistic, super cool. Um, and it works for a movie like this with a 12-year-old that, just is killing people. Now, another thing I think was that the comedy wasn't too over the top as far as comedy goes. With horror comedies, it can be a kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes there are horror comedies that really nail the balance between horror and comedy to a way where, like, you're laughing, but you're also like suspenseful, or you're also on edge. Um, I'm the type of person, and I said this recently in a post I post on Threads. I'm the type of person that laughs in awkward situations, or laughs at things that are like incredibly awkward. So I find the humor in a lot of horror movies, even horror movies I'm not supposed to find humor in, aka Long Legs. I'm still laughing about one scene in particular. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, but I'm still laughing about one scene in particular a week later. It's still like the funniest thing to me. Um, but I tend to dislike horror comedies that lean super duper into the comedy, and then there's like no substance in within the horror. This was definitely more of a comedy than a straight out and out horror film. It's not really that scary. But I think the comedy worked well because it was smart. It was playful. It didn't really take itself too seriously, but it also didn't get too like campy, over the top. Everybody kind of chewed the scenery in this movie. There really wasn't, for me personally, there really wasn't a weak performer. Everybody kind of chewed the scenery, and really just like did a good job in this film, like putting forth that like each character, each criminal, and all their history and everything like that. Dan Stevens was a freaking psychopath in this movie, which I was shocked about. Like, my first introduction to Dan Stevens was the Beauty and the Beast live action remake, so this was definitely a far cry from that. And also, he's going to be in another movie later this year called Cuckoo, and he also looks very wild in that. So I don't know, like, man, he's in his weird little guy era, and we're here for it. At least I'm here for it. I don't know about y'all, but I'm definitely here for it. Speaking of great performances, Alicia Weir, who plays Abigail, was fantastic. I don't know if this is her first movie. I've never seen her in anything before. She killed it. And the idea to have her dancing while she's pursuing her victims was perfect. And I know that, like, it can seem kind of like Megan-esque because of that one scene in Megan, but like, she's doing ballet. She's doing graceful stuff. She, like, there's one part, like, not to spoil it, but there's one part where she just leaps over someone's body, and she just is super graceful with it. There's a lot of dancing from her in this movie, and it works. I mean, she's a 12-year-old who's been 12 for God knows how long, because she's a vampire, and she's very elegant, she's very graceful, she's very creepy, and like, also making her a ballerina makes her more agile, makes her a little bit more difficult to fight. So I thought that was pretty cool, and her acting was just really good. She had moments where she was very creepy, moments where she was hilarious, and then moments where you actually felt bad for her. Like, she carried those like three like types of she carried that character very well, the character of Abigail, almost to a point where I'm like, I wish we had more of Abigail. I wish we could see more of her. Um she did great. It's kind of a heist movie, but not really. But it is a great heist movie. I mean, at the end of the day, it's more of like a ransom movie, I guess you can say. But the fact that there's like this element where every single person that's there is like kind of like criminals and stuff, and or they're wannabe criminals, and like they just want the money so they can like go off and be rich and live their lives, do what they've got to do. I think is super cool. It adds another layer to the story, because it's not like they're just like hopeless victims, for Abigail. Like some of them are sympathetic characters and then others are kind of reprehensible. And you're just kind of like, ooh, like I don't really like you all that much. Melissa Barrera, of course, kills it as usual. She did great. And another thing I really liked about this movie was that it deglamorizes vampires. So I've been saying this for a while now. A lot of people have talked about how they're tired of seeing vampire movies. I can never get tired of seeing vampire movies. I love vampires. I love the aesthetic of vampires. One of my like favorite movies for like a long time was Blade. And I just really love, like, I mean, I love Interview with a Vampire. I love, Queen of the Damned. I did not get into Twilight really. I mean, I have watched it like now since, and I do like think it's kind of a funny movie. Like if you don't take it too seriously, it's definitely more like cringy, but also like kind of good in parts. Like, I mean, I will say that Breaking Dawn Battle would have had my jaw on the floor if I was a Twihard back then. But I feel like there's this glamorization of vampires that has always existed, and it got worse after Twilight came out, where people became obsessed with vampires and not for the right reasons. So you had like things like Vampire Academy, The Vampire Diaries, and all of these stories of people falling in love with vampires and like wanting to live forever. And I mean, you could kind of argue that like True Blood was really the first one to glamorize vampires, but True Blood wasn't as accessible to younger audiences as like Twilight, Vampire Diaries, things like that. And in my opinion, not that there's anything wrong with those like stories if that's what you're into, I think it kind of takes away the horror, the terror of vampires. Because as cool as vampires are, and as cool as the concept is of like living forever, there's also like huge downsides to it. And one of those is living forever and like, and all that stuff. But also, they're scary, they're killers, they're predators, they're hunters. And to have like these vampires going to high school and falling in love with some like teenage girl, it's just so weird to me to see them doing that when you think in your mind like this is like a monster, this is a monster. So I think that's the reason why I liked this movie too, was because Abigail was not playing around. She was not, yes, she was a cute little girl, like, ballerina girl, but once she peeled back the facade of being like this little helpless little girl, like she was a predator. She was someone I would not want to meet in a dark alley. She's a vampire I would not want to hang out with. Even with the way the movie ended, I'm not going to spoil it, but even with the way the movie ended, I still would not want to meet Abigail in a dark alley. I am so good. I am so good. Like Edward Cullen, I could probably take him. I can probably take him. I mean, I know I couldn't outrun him because he literally says that in the movie, but like all I have to do is just like kind of go, and then he would be on the floor. He would be in love with me for the rest of his life. So like, but Abigail, no, there's like no real winning with her, and you can't trust anything she says. She's very like she's very like, yeah, I'll do this, and then she just does the opposite. So like a character like that for me is awesome, and I love that we're seeing these stories come back into light. I mean, like we have the remake of Nosferatu later this year. I mentioned that in my last video. I'm really excited to see what they do with that. But this was definitely one of those like instances where I'm like, oh, they took a vampire character and they didn't glamorize her. Obviously not, because like that was the point of the movie. And what I did find out about this movie originally was that it was supposed to be a remake of the movie Dracula's Daughter, and it kind of is a spiritual successor to it. I won't go into too much detail, but it kind of is a spiritual successor to it. And I love that. I love that it's a like not a remake of Dracula's Daughter, but it's like its own retelling of Dracula's Daughter in a way. So if you've ever seen that movie, I haven't seen that movie in years. Probably not since I was in like 4th or 5th grade. So that's crazy. I need to revisit that. But I thought that this was really handled really well, and an interesting tale, an interesting spin. I forgot to mention Giancarlo Esposito is in this movie too. He's not in it for very long, but he's in it too. So if you like Giancarlo Esposito, which I know a lot of people do, definitely check this movie out. But yeah, I do like the fact that they kind of deglamorized the vampire. They kind of brought it back to making it scary, so that you're not like, oh yeah, like it's some sexy girl, like, not saying the 12-year-old, obviously, but like, like they have some like older woman walking around, like, no, and it just kind of takes away from it where you're like, okay, well, she's like pretty and like attractive, or some older guy, seducing Melissa Barrera's character, like, okay, well, he's attractive, so I just kind of like the fact that she was a predator, she was a hunter, and that was like that was the whole focus of the movie, was that she is a hunter, and that's what she does. And I loved that. I love that. And the way she hunts, I mean, she's graceful. She's graceful. That's all I gotta say. She does her little twirl, she does her little leaps and her bounds, and she attacks her victims, which is beautiful. I will say this. Normally, this is the part of the video where I would jump into the things I didn't like about the movie, and I don't really have anything I didn't like about the movie. That's a rarity. There's always something I can find, but this is one of the times that, like, it was just so much fun watching this movie that I don't have any complaints. But I will say there is a complaint I have that is movie adjacent, but not with the movie itself. I don't like the fact that they told us she was a vampire, because the way this movie handles that reveal, it would have been so awesome if we had gone in blind and did not know that Abigail was a vampire. That's probably my biggest complaint about this movie, and it has nothing to do with the movie itself. It should have never been advertised as a vampire movie. I remember actually seeing the trailer in January of this year, and like when it revealed her being a vampire, it showed you her with the teeth and the eyes and everything. I was like, oh, see, that would have been cool to just find out. Like, it would have been cool just to see it. And I mean, considering how late I was to the game, I probably would have had that spoiled for me anyways at this point. But I still think it would have been cool because of the way this movie handles the reveal of Abigail as a vampire. They do not reveal it immediately. It takes a while, and the way they do it is so good, in my opinion. It's genuinely like creepy in a way that if you had gone in not knowing a thing about this movie, not knowing anything, like, it would catch you off guard, like completely catch you off guard, because she just is very smooth with how she reveals that she's a monster. And it does kind of devolve into chaos and devolve into a comedy right after she reveals it, but it's still such a good reveal that as you're watching it unfold, you're just like, what is she doing? What is she? Oh no! You freak out. So I'm kind of mad that they revealed that in the trailer. I kind of wish they had kept that under wraps more so than anything, because I feel like that would have been like a genuine jaw-dropping moment for the audience, and myself included. It would have been really cool to think you're going in to see like maybe a slasher film, like there's maybe thinking like someone associated with her father is going around taking all these people out one by one, only to find out that it was a vampire film and that she was the one taking everyone out one by one. So I kind of think that's the only bad thing about this movie, was that, to me, the biggest thing, that the most awesome part of this movie was something that was the central focus in the trailer, and it took away from that moment when she finally did reveal herself. Because if they had gone in just guns blazing with her being a vampire, I would have been like, okay, yeah, we got it. We got it. Totally. But the fact that they dragged it out and they kind of made you feel a little bad for her, but then also as things are going on, you're going, hmm, something's not right with this girl. The stuff she says, the way she acts, you're like, something's not right with this girl. And then they finally just drop that reveal. Like, that should have been the movie. Like, that should have been like something that the movie got to do, not the trailer. And it's kind of a problem I have. I do want to make a video about this at some point. Um, Movie trailers giving away too much. There's a specific movie that's coming out later this year that I saw the trailer for, and I had already seen the original version of this movie, so I knew what happened in this movie. But I saw the trailer for this movie, and I was pissed because they gave away the plot twist for the movie in the trailer. How are you going to do that? That's the whole plot twist. So again, I will probably at some point make a video about movie trailers ruining their movies by just giving you too much, because there's just too much of that in this. And Abigail is a good example. Even though I don't think they were ever intending to hide that from the audience, I think they should have, because the way they revealed it to the audience was so perfect that it would have been a genuine, like, oh, moment for people, where maybe they wouldn't have been like freaking out, but they, were super excited about it, but they would have been like, "Oh wow, that's pretty cool." Like, I had no idea what was going on. It's almost akin to like the movie Orphan, how they kept that plot twist under wraps. And I know some people think that plot twist is incredibly far fetched. I disagree. It's one of my favorite plot twists in the history of like film. They kept that under wraps, and it made you go, okay, well, what's wrong with this girl? What's wrong with this girl? And the entire time you're watching the movie, you're like, what's wrong with Esther? What's wrong with Esther? Only to find out that Esther's not a child. Esther's a grown woman, So that's why I think they should have done what I think they should have done with Abigail is it should have been like what almost like, there's something wrong with this girl, and they should have played into that a little bit in the trailer. And then when you watch the movie, it's like, oh, she's a vampire. Oh, that's cool. Like, I didn't see that coming. Like, you're just kind of confused, like something's wrong with this girl, what's wrong with her? And then it turns out that she's a creature of the night. So, yeah, I think that's really the only bad thing because when I think about the movie itself is great. Like, no complaints. No complaints. This might be my shortest like new movie review because I got nothing to say other than this is a fantastic movie. So let's move on since I have no more bad things to say about this movie. Let's move on to my final thoughts about this movie. And I'm kind of going to go on a little bit of tangent, so maybe this will be longer than 30 minutes because goodness knows I can yap. I can yap. So yeah, Abigail for me was a reminder of why I love horror movies because it was fun, it was campy, and it was gory as all hell. And I had so much fun watching this movie. I mean, it was Saturday night, and I was on a video call with my best friend, and I was just like, this is genuinely one of my favorite movies, like recently. And the thing is, like, this year, there's been a lot of polarizing movies, in my opinion. I know that there's like a general consensus within the horror community that this is a good year for horror, and I would say, yes, it is a good year for horror. But there's a lot of movies that everybody's just kind of split down the middle. And a lot of the times, like, you hear great things about a movie, but then a few weeks later, or a week later, or a month later, you start to hear the negativity about the movie. A great example of that was a movie I reviewed earlier this month, A Quiet Place Day One. When that movie came out, I heard nothing but good things. Now I'm hearing nothing but negative things about that movie, which makes me go, well, wait, I really enjoyed that movie. Am I wrong? Like, am I wrong for enjoying that? Because almost everyone now is like, that movie was awful. I know what you guys are talking about. And in a similar vein, Longlegs. Longlegs was met with nothing but praise when it first released, but now I'm starting to see the tide shift where people are saying, it was boring, it was stupid, it was overrated, it was, dumb. And again, that was a movie I enjoyed, I really liked. And even with the first Omen, it's crazy because when that movie first came out, I heard nothing but negative things about the first Omen. Only to have someone suggest that movie to me because they loved it so much, I sat down and it was one of my favorite movies of the year so far. On the flip side of that, a movie like Late Night with the Devil, which I've mentioned before in this channel, that is like my nemesis right now. It's taken over for Barbarian, is a movie that everybody was going nuts about, and still to this day, there's people that say it is the best movie that's come out this year, and I think it is the bottom of the barrel, in my opinion. I just did not like it. And I think it's interesting because our tastes are also different, and the problem is because we all have platforms to speak, we can all tell you what our taste is and then make you feel bad for feeling that way. And in the case of a movie like Abigail, it was the first time that like I was like, no one told me whether this movie was good or bad. There was no like absolute love, people like throwing themselves at this movie versus like people like hating this movie. This was just a movie that people were like, yeah, I saw it. It was good. It was good. And that was it. That's how Abigail was like that for me. Every person I watched on YouTube, every person that I talked to in real life, oh yeah, I saw Abigail. It was pretty good. It was very like middle of the road, very middle of the road. Even if they didn't like it, they're just like, it was pretty good. It was decent. It was what you expect, And for me, I sat down and I thought this movie has super funny, which I know, when you're watching a horror movie, you're not really trying to go for that, but it was super funny. It was super clever. The special effects were amazing. The cast was stacked and everybody lived up to their part. Like, there was nobody I felt that was dragging the movie down. That's just me personally. There are a lot of people that might disagree with me, I'm sure, but there was not one person in the film that I felt dragged the movie down. Everybody I feel like pulled their weight and, played their part the way they were supposed to. It had an amazing like story and even a great reveal at the end, which made me like want more of this universe and more of this story and more of this character. Are we going to get that? I don't know. And I honestly, if we don't get that, that's fine. But the way that they set things up, I'm like, if they wanted to, they could literally do a Universal Monsters like universe off of this movie. And I'm like, I'm just saying they could do it. They could do it. And it just reminded me why I love horror movies, because when you take away everybody's opinions, when people are just like, it was a movie, watch the movie, formulate an opinion yourself. I thought it was good, whatever. When you take away everyone's opinions, it gives you the opportunity to enjoy the movie and also to feel comfortable enjoying the movie. Because so far, for me, no one can tell me nothing. This is the best movie of 2024, and I just like it so much because it's so much fun. And sometimes you need a little bit of fun. Like, yeah, it's not scary. Is it scary? No. And but again, you're coming from somebody who's not afraid of vampires. I don't find anything about vampires scary. Like, people are like, "Oh, 30 Days of Night is one of the scariest vampire movies of all time." Doesn't scare me, never scared me, because I think vampires are cool as hell. So I'm not scared of vampires. I don't find them scary. That's why I always laugh when like Halloween Horror Nights tries to do a vampire scare zone, and I'm like, I'm not scared of them. I'm not scared of them. Like, that's just me personally. Everybody has their things. Some people aren't afraid of zombies. Some people aren't afraid of werewolves. Some people aren't afraid of slashers. You know, I'm not afraid of vampires. So even if this movie was trying to be scary, it would not have scared me, more than likely. It just would not have gotten under my skin because I think vampires are cool. So I don't have a problem. I don't have a fear of that. But the fact of the matter is, just because a movie's not scary, a horror movie's not scary, doesn't mean that it's not good and it's not enjoyable. I think the fact of the matter is, did you have a good time watching it? Okay, then it's a good movie. Like, that's the way I look at it. If something bores you to tears, if something doesn't really like sit well with you, that's totally fine and totally valid. But if you sit down and you watch a movie and you have a good time watching it, you have a good time watching it. And I think that's another thing that makes what we all do in the horror community, but what I'm doing, what makes it so hard, because I pretty much enjoy everything I watch. There's not much that I genuinely hate. That's why, like, when movies like Late Night with the Devil or like Barbarian don't sit well with me, or I don't enjoy them, it makes me very upset. And because I feel like, if everybody else enjoyed this, why don't I enjoy this? And B, it's almost like you let me down because I'm the easiest person to please. You could put a dog doing flips on a screen and I'm gonna be like, cinematic gold. Cinematic gold. I love this movie. Like, I know a lot of people are gonna be like, oh well, you don't have great taste then. You don't know what's good. Like, you're not look, I'm not a movie person. When I say I'm not a movie person, I mean I don't work in the industry. I've never worked in the industry. I don't plan on ever working in the industry. I review movies from a standpoint of being a fan. And the the not problem is, I like everything. I like just about everything. There's very little that a movie can do, or yeah, a movie can do to piss me off and make me not like it. And when a movie does that, it is disappointing. But in the case of this movie, it didn't disappoint. For me, it was exactly what I was expecting to get. It gave me, this sort of like comforting feeling while I was watching it, where I was just having fun. I was just laughing. I was just joking. And I wasn't laughing because I was, listening to Nick Cage sing a song that was super comical, even though it wasn't supposed to be. And I feel weird because I feel like I'm the only person who finds that scene in Long Legs hilarious, because everyone's like, it was so creepy. And I'm like, I mean, it was creepy, but it wasn't creepy for the reasons you're talking about. Like, it was more like, I am uncomfortable. This reminds me of the time I was barked at Walmart by some random guy. Like, that's what it was giving me, and I'm laughing because I'm uncomfortable. Um, it was fun. It was funny. It was comforting. It was like, I was just having a good time. And by the time the movie was done, I was like, I really liked that movie. And I would recommend it to everybody that wants to watch something fun. If you go into Abigail just wanting to have a good time, wanting to enjoy the film for what it is, you'll probably have a good time. If you go into the movie expecting something, you're probably not going to have a good time, and that's how we should be approaching all movies. I'm guilty of it. I let my expectations get in the way of things all the time, but the way I see it is, if you approach a movie with little to no expectation, there's not really much it can do to disappoint you because, again, it's a movie. It's meant to entertain, and the worst thing a movie can do is just not be entertaining. And at the end of the day, pretty much every movie out there has some entertainment value. And that's what I'm gonna say about like movies in general, but also about Abigail. Abigail's an incredibly entertaining movie. It's super fun. It took over the number one spot easily on my list that I've been making of all the horror movies I've been watching that have been released in 2024. It is at the tippity top. It dethroned The First Omen. I'm so sorry, First Omen. I know I love you were holding on to that spot, and I thought Longlegs was gonna snatch it, but Abigail, she she was the what you would call it. She was the dark horse. She just sped past everyone and took number one. We still got a lot of year left. We still got a lot of horror movies left. We've got Trap coming out soon, which I'm very excited about seeing that. I still haven't seen Maxine. I gotta watch Maxine. We have Alien Romulus, which I'm sure I am going to love because, again, like I said before, Fede Alvarez and practical effects, sign me up. And of course, my most anticipated horror movie of 2024, although we have to wait till Christmas for it, is Nosferatu. So I'm holding on to hope that maybe Abigail will keep the number one spot for the rest of the year, but maybe there will be another dark horse that comes through, snatches that title from her, and runs off into the night. So, yeah, my rating for this one, how many stars would I give it? It's a very rare rating. It's a rating I don't give very often. 5 out of 5 stars. Easily. 5-star movie. No notes. Keep up the good work, Radio Silence, because genuinely you guys just keep producing gold. And I am thrilled to live in an era where you guys are making movies because holy crap, your movies are so much fun. So yeah, 5 out of 5 for Abigail. Abigail, you are goated for this year. And that is all the time we have today for this episode. I'm going to be working on my big Halloween Horror Nights video starting this week. I'm going to start doing some recording. I'm probably not going to record it all in one night. It's probably going to be cut up into multiple different pieces, and then I'm just going to Frankenstein it together. You know. But yeah, I'm going to start working on that, and hopefully we'll get some more announcements soon. Hopefully we'll get the last remaining house and all the remaining scare zones. There's already been scare zone construction up, and I am going to make a big Halloween Horror Nights 2024 like breakdown video telling you what to expect, and then also giving my tips and tricks that I do every single year. So look forward to that in the future. I might be doing another does this deserve to be a classic movie at some point video. I might do that. I just haven't gotten the gumption to write that script yet because I've been doing so many unscripted videos, and to be quite honest, I like going off script. It is a little bit more fun for me. Yeah, and again, we are getting closer and closer to Halloween Horror Nights season. I'm super excited about that. We've got some great movies coming out soon. Hopefully, I'll be able to catch some of the movies I've already missed that have come out in 2024, like In a Violent Nature, and then some of the more dud movies like Tarot and Imaginary. Get to watch those finally. So yeah, anyways, I'm gonna head on out and just get ready for bed because I'm a fun person and I go to bed at 10 p.m. at night. But yes, let me know what you guys think. If you've watched this movie, if you've seen it, let me know if you guys like this movie, if you had a good time with it. Or if you disagree with me and you think that this movie was absolute garbaggio, that's fine too. You can find me on pretty much every social media account except for X, Twitter, whatever they're calling it these days, whatever the kids call it these days, under Creepy Critiques, except for on Instagram and Threads where I'm underscore Creepy Critiques because of a mistake that I made that I cannot rectify. So, yeah, there's those. You can check me out and obviously keep an eye on this channel because I post a video every week, or at least I try to, unless something comes up and I am unable to, but I try to post a video every single week. And, yeah, that's pretty much it for housekeeping. Go watch Abigail if you haven't. If you watch this video and then you haven't watched this movie, what are you doing? Go watch Abigail. Go get Peacock, watch Abigail. So yeah, I'm gonna leave you guys for tonight. I've got some great things coming up for you, and I am super excited to, share that with you. So have a good night, be safe, have a good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, listening to this, whatever time it is. And I will see you guys again with another creepy critique.